This is an SM Media production. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media Pro Wrestling Show. I'm Scott McPike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always. Delighted to welcome this week's special guest. It's a pleasure to welcome Zach Dynamite on the show. Zach, welcome on. It's a pleasure.
Hi, thanks for having me on. It's great to be on.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. It's been a weird kind of week, hasn't it? There's been a lot going on as usual.
Yeah, definitely. A lot's happened this week.
A lot's happened. Let's start where else do we start? We have the news now that Crown Jewel, the main event, is going to be Roman Reigns defending his Universal Championship against the one and only Logan Paul. Zach, have you followed kind of how this came about, or was this kind of a surprise when you first heard it?
So I saw that Logan Paul was going to be on SmackDown, and then I heard, I think it was one of the news sites was saying that we're going to do a press conference, and chances are it was going to be Roman and Logan Paul. And to be honest, it didn't really surprise me in the slightest, because it sounds like it's exactly the kind of match that they would have for a Crown Jewel pay-per-view. So I can't say I was surprised when it finally got announced officially that it was going to be Roman and Logan Paul. I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Well, it does. The kind of backstory to it starts with the podcast. I don't know if you've ever seen Logan Paul does a podcast. It's called Impulsive. That's quite a good point. He did a podcast with Roman Reigns, and
okay,
it was a really good. It was one of those podcasts I would recommend anyone to listen to, because you see a side of Roman Reigns I don't think we've seen before. Like, he's very just talking away. Is that like it's not, since he's obviously done this heel character, he's been quite guarded in the character, obviously for obvious reasons. But it was a really different side of him. Like, it was a real. I imagine what you would see behind the scenes, and there was no setup towards a match. Like, we knew when Vince McMahon went on Pat McAfee's show, remember, just before WrestleMania?
Yeah.
We knew that was leading towards something. We thought originally it was going to be McAfee against McMahon, but it turned out it was kind of building up to McAfee against Theory. But there wasn't anything like mentioned. It wasn't like Paul and Reigns were having any interaction. It was basically just a podcast. It's basically what we were doing just now.
Yeah.
But once the podcast finished, Logan Paul changed his tune, because he came out and said after it, I could take Roman Reigns any day. So,
right, okay.
It was building up from then, and then obviously we saw that magnificent Paul Heyman return on SmackDown, and that's the guy you need for that kind of thing. I think we know this will sell because Logan Paul's a tremendous box office attraction. You can see with his fighting career, he's done well. He's done brilliant. I mean, he's fought Floyd Mayweather in an exhibition, and I think he's outdrawn quite a lot of boxing fights in the past couple of years. But we are now into the stage of last week. I don't know if you saw last week's show. We're talking to Ruby Roberts, and we asked Ruby, how do you end the title reign of Roman Reigns? Is this the way you do it? How do you do this match? What's the way? Because it's going one of two ways. Either Logan Paul was going to win, and we see this massive mainstream attention that it would no doubt retain, but also is that the way you end Roman Reigns' title run?
For me, no. I can see the idea of Logan Paul winning, because it would make headlines and it would make massive news. But I think having just the match itself, Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns, is enough of a media grabber, I think. And ending Roman Reigns' 700 plus day reign to Logan Paul, I think there's more negatives than there are positives, because I think if you have Logan Paul be the one to end Roman Reigns when no one else could, like Drew couldn't and Lesnar couldn't and all these other big names, I think fans would immediately turn on Logan Paul. And it feels like they've tried really hard to get the wrestling audience to embrace him somewhat. And his performances have helped. Like WrestleMania and SummerSlam is incredible.
Yeah.
Considering he's never wrestled before. So I think just having the match is a big enough media attention without dropping the title, in my opinion. Because I think surely when Roman Reigns does lose the championship, it's to someone that you want to build as the next, crown jewel of the company, surely. Ending a 700-day reign as champion is not something you do on a whim just to get some headlines, in my opinion. But what do I know?
The other side of it is, though, do you do this? Do you give Logan Paul the title, and Logan Paul goes on, as you say, Logan Paul is ringside with his brother when he fights Anderson Silva? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. There is two sides to it. And there's arguments for both. I just can't see them. I can't see it. I'm not saying it's impossible though, because it's WWE and branding is everything. But I don't see it personally.
I'm not a fan of the dodgy finishes and the shenanigans ways to get out of title matches. But this, to me, it seems as if you're leading towards some sort of an angle for a future, maybe WrestleMania. I think that's the way. You've got this marquee match. Logan Paul's going to, I would imagine Logan Paul's going to be at WrestleMania. I think he signed contracts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he'll be at WrestleMania.
So who's the guy to then do that? Do you bring somebody? The problem we had with Clash at the Castle was, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, it was two. There was too many interferences. You had the Tyson Fury thing that didn't really make sense at the time. I know it was obviously for, as you say, the 2-minute Sky Sports news thing. I get that, but it's going to have to be something similar here. But we're talking about it, and that's what the WWE want. They want us to talk about it. So, but I do not see Roman Reigns losing the title, but I also don't see Roman Reigns pinning Logan Paul clean. I don't think it's going to be Logan Paul's going to get fed to Roman. I don't see that happening.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I don't think you want to beat Logan outright fully because it's only his third match. But then saying that, it is only his third match.
Yeah.
And I think definitely priority is Roman Reigns over Logan Paul. So I don't know. I don't know what they do, but you've got the Bloodline, you've got Paul Heyman, you've got solo. There's loads of ways out that they could, if they want to, and I'm sure they'll have something in mind to get out of it while still getting all the media attention in the world that they could possibly want from it. Yeah.
Absolutely. One guy who could be making his return to the WWE in the near future is Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt has been the subject of obviously speculation since Triple H's command, whether he would be next to command. I don't know if you saw after the show they were playing the White Rabbit tune.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter that they've been doing that at a lot of different house shows as well. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely something.
It's definitely something. They were talking about it Karrion Kross because of, I think he was the White Rabbit in Independence or something, but I think this is Bray Wyatt. I think there's something to it because I always think they were bringing back Bray Wyatt. I think it was just a case of maybe waiting for the right time. And there's no right time than probably when you least expect it, because that's a Bray Wyatt, typical Bray Wyatt thing. That's how we did like him. And what do you think about that? Would you be keen to welcome Bray Wyatt back, or is it?
So, I like Bray Wyatt. I think he's a great worker. I think he's a great wrestler. I personally would like to see him come back as Bray Wyatt and not The Fiend, because the Fiend stuff was cool when it first debuted, but it lost a lot of steam very quickly because there's only so much you can do with such a supernatural element. I like my personal favorite Bray Wyatt was the original version, the cult leader, because there was still the supernatural elements and spooky stuff, but you could also have him wrestle and you could fit him into storylines easier. It wasn't so boxed in. So I'd be happy for Bray Wyatt to come back. So I'm a big fan of Bray Wyatt. But I just think, you can still do The Fiend, certainly, but just have it be like a very special occasion thing. Like, don't make The Fiend the character. It's a special attraction. Like, have just Bray Wyatt. And he's creative. Like, he'll come back reinvented because he's a creative guy, but I'd be very happy for Bray Wyatt coming back. It's just, the thing is with bringing Bray Wyatt back. Whenever I was watching as a fan and stuff, you need to have a plan for someone like Bray Wyatt. You don't just bring them back on a whim.
Yes.
With no direct, because that's how, I think that's in many ways how the Fiend got so derailed. They had an initial idea, and then they didn't really know where they were going with it, and then within like 2-3 months, the wheels were falling off already. So with Bray Wyatt, if you bring him back, they need to bring him back with a purpose and a reason and a direction, and I think it'd be really cool.
I love the Fiend. See, when the Fiend first started, see when you as you say, and you made a good point there, when you have that first couple of months where everything's new. I remember when he was attacking Kurt Angle, when he was that was good. But when it became a case of, as you say, how do you, because you can't have the Fiend. I think Hell in a Cell was the one with Rollins was the one where I was what do you do after that? And obviously went on to win the title, and he done pretty well. And where do you go from there? And then you had him lose to Goldberg
in 3 minutes or whatever it was.
You can't do that with a character who you're perceiving to be the guy who nobody can stop, the supernatural guy, as you say. So how do you do it? How do you bring him back? I think it's a kind of hybrid of the two. I think he, as you say, he's a very creative guy. I think there'll be a lot more freedom for a guy like Bray Wyatt now.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
It won't be because he's had good runs. I mean, he's a 2-time champion. But he's also had these times where you're like, what are they actually doing with him? Because he lost to Cena at WrestleMania. He then had that ridiculous Sister Abigail thing. He then went on to lose at Crown Jewel and Hell in a Cell. He's had those moments, and he's a guy, I think, who you give the creative freedom to. You go, right, because you don't have to give Bray Wyatt the championship. It's like the Undertaker in a way. You don't have to. Bray Wyatt can be a storyline for anyone without having to have a title. I thought the title actually made it a bit weird because you were like, you're giving us a supernatural guy who is proceeding to be the root of all evil, but he's wanting to carry around a championship.
Yeah.
So
that's it. Like when once they put the Fiend into the Universal title picture, that's when it started to fall apart, because here's this demonic hellspawn. Why does he care about golden leather? And like it doesn't really, because when they put him in the title hunt and they were going to make him champion, it's like, okay, once you make him champion, you're hurting yourselves, because then he has to lose eventually, probably sooner than later, and it gets quite muddied. Do you remember when Mankind first debuted?
Yeah,
in '96.
Yeah, I don't remember. When he first back,
So when he debuted and he attacked the Undertaker, they had a plan for him. And Mankind was just after the Undertaker, and it worked great because you could believe that this lunatic Mankind only wanted to hurt the Undertaker. There was no championship, and it worked really well. I think you do something similar with the Fiend or Bray Wyatt. Him being champion just doesn't really work, because you're pigeonholing yourself too much, in my opinion. Like why would the Fiend want to carry around a championship belt?
Yeah, and one thing that Bray Wyatt can do is talk, and that's why, I mean, not many people can do a 5-minute promo with a puppet pig and a, do you know what I mean, and a buzzard next to him. Do you know what I mean? That's the genius of him. So I think you let that flourish, and you don't micromanage it. You don't put him in a ridiculous thing where he's been set on fire and then 2 months later he's coming back fine. It's just there was a lot of that storyline that it was throwing a lot of stuff against the wall, and none of it really stuck. No.
And none of it really, it was one of those, like, you're watching it and you're like, this is absurd. And wrestling's absurd, but if it's absurd for wrestling, you've kind of messed it up, I think. You know?
Yeah, I think that's right. But yeah, I think we will see Bray Wyatt soon, and I'm gonna, before we get into talk about the next one, Bray Wyatt carrying Cross, that's a really good avenue to go down for me. But we could potentially see Bray Wyatt at Survivor Series in War Games. Now, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this because it's just been announced today as we're recording this. Do you do War Games in the old-fashioned way of a 4v4, or do you bring in the Survivor Series way of a 5v5 elimination style? That's kind of how I've thought. How do you do it? Because I'm really excited about this because it's not going to be just a case of Raw versus SmackDown. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, anything's better than brand supremacy. I hated that, especially when they held the draft in like October and then Survivor Series in November, and it's like you've been on the brand a month. Brand supremacy, it just didn't make any sense. I think with War Games, you could easily do, 5 versus 5 elimination style, but part of me thinks is that a little overkill. Like you've got War Games in of itself, and you've had Survivor Series matches many years, but it's just 4 versus 4. So for me, War Games is enough. Like just having War Games at Survivor Series is really cool, and I think War Games is enough. And as like the NXT War Games were all really good.
Yeah,
like the format they had, NXT War Game takeovers. Yeah, I think you just lift that. You just do the NXT War Games at Survivor Series. Or if you want to get really old school, throw the roof on and it's submission only. If you want to get really old school with it, you know what I mean?
No, I think that could be.
Either works.
Yeah, I think that's a way to go down. But the one thing we are going to miss, obviously, is William Regal shouting War Games. We're not going to see that this year, which I'm gutted about. But they've said there it's going to be a men and women's War Games match. Now, my understanding would be it would probably be the Bloodline against Babyfaces and the new group against Babyfaces, I would imagine. Is probably...
Yeah, that makes sense, to be honest. Sense.
Yeah. And I just think this is a thing we look forward to. And hopefully hopefully it delivers, and I'm pretty sure at War Games it will. And I think you could even see maybe an NXT coming into it as well. Like we're hearing it's not brand supremacy. Solo Sikoa as part of the Bloodline could be of an NXT counterpart to face him. It could be interesting. But I'm looking forward to that. Actually, I've been delighted with that news today.
My only thing, I really wish, and I get it, like they announced it's to get the hype going. I just wish it was one of those, like, they did the story, and instead of announcing it as War Games, you build and build and build, and then it's like on an episode of SmackDown or Raw, a big brawl, and it's like War Games at Survivor Series, and it's the big, oh my God, but I get advertising ahead of time, you get buzz, you get hype, you get people talking, I get it. But, like, as a wrestling fan, when I was growing up, I always loved the fact that, like, you never knew when Hell in a Cell was coming.
Yeah.
There'd be like a feud or whatever, and then they would be like, it's going to get settled inside Hell in a Cell. You're like, oh my God, Hell in a Cell. And it was exciting because it felt more organic as opposed to War Games is in 2 months. Oh, okay, cool. But now we know it's coming, so I think some of the organic storytelling's lost a little bit.
I think that's right.
I can see both sides, to be honest, because like announcing it, you get people talking and people get excited. So I get it.
And it's that I think it's that thing that made the Regal thing so good. It was like, I mean, I remember was it Cole and McAfee thing? That was leading to what you could see where that was leading to, but until you heard William Regal utter the words, you were like, right, where's this going? Exactly. So you missed that, but we'll get that, I would imagine, from probably Adam Pearce or something announcing it, but it won't be the same. But we also have the PWI 500 been announced over the past few days as well, and Roman Reigns tops the list, but interesting, some Scottish wrestlers in it as well, like Kez Evans, Daz Black, some great publicity for them, obviously, to make that list. Who can I stood out to you, like from a Scottish perspective, getting in that list?
Seeing the Scottish names like Kez Evans, Leighton Buzzard, it's names that if anyone in Scotland was going to be on it, those are the ones I expected to be on it, to be honest. Like I like Leighton Buzzard. I've seen a lot of the stuff. I do like Leighton Buzzard. But it's great to have some Scottish representation on there. Because it's good for the overall Scottish scene just to have that, name recognition in such a list.
Yeah, absolutely. One final bit of business we'll talk about is the Malachi Black situation. He is obviously been announcing that he's taking a break from wrestling. I know there was speculation that he'd asked for his release from AEW. What do you think of this whole thing? Do you think there is maybe potential he's going back, or is he just completely zoned out of wrestling at the moment?
So I I heard bits and pieces. I didn't really pay any attention to it until he himself put that big message up, read that, because it's one of these things, like, whenever someone decides to take a break for like personal reasons or whatever, I never like jump on the bandwagon or get too into it until the person themselves have come out and said their piece, because it's their business. And you know, if he needs a break, great, good. You know, I think he's doing the right thing. You know, he's looking after himself above all else, and that's what he has to do, and that's what's important. So, you know, I think it's, if he feels that that's what he needs to do, then good on him for recognizing that and doing that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's the right thing to do. I think you could see in that statement, I think there was maybe something in it, as we know, if you need to take time off, there's no alternative. You've got to, and we're wishing him all the best, and I hope to see him soon, because I'm a huge fan of him. Again, where he goes is unknown, but I just hope we see him again soon, because I'm a big fan of him. We've obviously welcomed you onto the show, Zach. It's a pleasure to have you. We'll talk a wee bit about your career in wrestling so far. What was it like? You mentioned there, obviously, about Mankind in '96. Like, you've been a fan, obviously, before you get into it. What was the kind of who was your kind of idols growing up, and what was it like, obviously, growing up and being a wrestling fan?
So the guy that got me into wrestling was Shawn Michaels. He's my all-time favorite. He was the first wrestler I ever watched, and it was just, you know, the way he moved around the ring and the things he did and the way he sold. It just totally caught my attention, and, you know, got me into wrestling. So he was always the guy that got me into it. And then, so I got into wrestling, it would be about 2003, early 2000s. Obviously started with WWE, but then I became a big TNA fan. Growing up, you know, like the mid 2000s, TNA was something else. Ring of Honor as well. Like, growing up, it was always guys like Shawn Michaels, AJ Styles, CM Punk, Edge, Christian. The smaller, more athletic guys are the ones that I always was more gravitated towards. And Sting as well. I love Sting.
And obviously, you're from Aberdeen originally, is that right? What was it like? Because Aberdeen and wrestling, like, was there a scene in Aberdeen? Like, what was it like, kind of growing up? Was there much in the way of kind of local stuff?
When I first got into wrestling, there wasn't really anything, to my knowledge, in Aberdeen. There wasn't much of a scene. It was about 2009, 2010 that I first noticed WrestleZone, and they were sort of like they're pretty much the only local wrestling company in Aberdeen. And it was about 2008, 2009 that they started coming to Aberdeen regularly, and it was 2010 that they started running Aberdeen as like their home base. And then the minute I saw that there was a wrestling school, so it's like 2010, I immediately joined up, because I'd always wanted to be a pro wrestler, but in Aberdeen there was no wrestling schools, there was no local promotion. So for me it was always like a pipe dream. It was never going to happen. And the minute I found their website, it was like there's a wrestling school opening, I was there immediately.
See, when you obviously started training, what was it like? Like, how it was like? Obviously, you watch it on the TV, and I would imagine getting into it and doing it yourself is obviously a lot different. How did you find that kind of difference?
So when I first started training, I didn't really know what I was getting myself in for, to be honest. Like, I had no idea like what it was going to be like. Thankfully, I always sort of took to wrestling quite naturally. I found like the actual bumps and physicality, it came quite naturally to me. That was not really an issue. It was more the performance aspect, you know, like being a character, talking, those kind of like the showbiz part of it. That's what I struggled with for a long time. But the actual in-ring physicality, I took to it quite quickly, and I can't explain it. It just felt right, you know.
What about your first match? You remember that?
So yeah, I had a proper debut, but I had we were doing wrestling was doing a activities week. I can't remember. I think it was Old Macker Academy. they were doing like an activities week. So like for 3 days, we set the ring up in the school, and people could come along, and we did like training, and just basically doing like 3 days worth of training to give people like a sample in case they wanted to pursue it. And then on the third night, they decided they were going to do like a training show for the students that come along the training week and their parents and stuff and friends. And I was just a trainee at this point, so this would be 2011, early 2011, and a day before they were like, okay, so we're gonna have a wrestle on the training show, and I was excited, but I had no preparation, no like ring gear or whatever. I was like, oh god, okay. So I had to borrow one of the coach's old ring gear, like just an old pair of tights, and I made my unofficial debut there. For like 30 people maybe, and then a few months later I made a proper debut on one of our bigger Aberdeen shows, the Regal Rumble of that year.
Right, okay.
And I was in a 2-on-1 handicap squash match. One of the bigger wrestlers that we had, Crusher Craig, needed just 2 people to kill, so me and another trainee, Fraser McLeod, we made our debut, just getting absolutely smashed to smithereens. It was great.
You mentioned there obviously WrestleZone, and obviously looking back in your kind of past matches and things like that, you've spent a lot of time with them. Like, how important have they been for you? Like, kind of having that one place where you feel home. Like, what's that like, particularly in an independent circuit?
So it's been awesome. Like, I love WrestleZone. You know, it's my home promotion. I'll always wrestle there. I love it there. They've always been very good to me. Like, they trained me, they put me on shows, and they've kept me booked for going on 12 years now. So I love WrestleZone. And it's been awesome because like having a regular gig in Aberdeen, it meant that I've essentially grown up in front of the WrestleZone audience as a wrestler. And I wasn't afraid to try different things here and there because it was a home promotion and you weren't always starting from scratch. Like, if you're an independent wrestler and you're going to lots of different places, you have to treat it almost like it's the first time every time until you're established. But in WrestleZone, because I was a regular there for such a long time, I could try different things, take some risks, and see what paid off. But no, wrestling has been incredibly important in my career, and it's my work there that it eventually led to me getting to wrestle in other places and go to different promotions. So yeah, wrestling has been so important for my development as a professional wrestler.
Yeah. One match I want to touch on was in 2014 when you had the opportunity to wrestle in a triple threat. Do you remember the kind of memories of knowing it was going to be Grado and Jay Lethal? Yeah.
So I was told it was going to be a 3-way with Grado, so that was awesome because 2014 was about when Grado was really
he was taking off a bit then,
really hot, and then Jay Lethal obviously was in Ring of Honor at the time and killing it in Ring of Honor, so that was awesome. And it was actually the second time that Jay Lethal had been in WrestleZone because he'd been in a few years prior. So for me, it was a big opportunity, and I was very, very excited. And like Jay Lethal was so sound. Like he came in and like honestly, such a like wonderful human being. Like just no pressure, just really relaxed, listened to ideas, gave feedback. It was really awesome. So being a younger guy, I'd only been wrestling maybe 3 years on shows at that point. It relaxed me a hell of a lot. And Grado was sound too. Grado's a good dude. Yeah. A lot of time for Grado.
What's that like though? See, when like you mentioned there about TNA and obviously Jay Lethal had been really, I mean, I still to this day think the promo with Ric Flair is one of my favourite kind of memories of him. But like you're up at you're watching that guy on the TV and then he comes in to WrestleZone. What goes through your mind and what's it like kind of working, like talking through a match with him? Do you call it in the ring or do you just go right, let's, because he's such a professional when he must have done it 1,000 times. Like, do you have a talk before it or do you just follow?
So like when he first comes in, you're like, oh my god, that's Jay Lethal. I've seen him on TV. But once you start speaking about the match, it's funny because like that kind of, oh my god, you're Jay Lethal or such and such, it kind of disappears once you start going over the match and it just becomes another match. You just sort of treat it like you would anyone else because once you're putting the match together and stuff, okay, now time for business. It's, we need to perform, we need to deliver. So that fandom kind of, disappears a little bit, and it's more game face, let's get some stuff done. And Lethal could absolutely call it in the ring because the guy's a pro. But at the time, I was, I'd only been wrestling 3 years, and you talk over it, you go through some stuff. Probably more for at the time just to put my mind at ease, so I knew what I was doing, But yeah, so like I'm not a big fan of having everything like pre-planned and beat for me. I like to leave some wiggle room to listen to the audience, listen to the crowd, and feel their energy as opposed to just we'll do this. Because I feel if you do that, you don't really leave yourself room for those organic moments that come from just listening to the crowd and listen to what they're feeling and what they want. I think it's important to leave that kind of that wiggle room.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously now, you've got the thing with the Foundation of the Future and Brad Ems and Ryan Riley. What's that been like as well? Because it's obviously a wee bit of kind of helping them with their moving forward, but also learning a bit as well, I'd imagine. Yeah,
so the Foundation of the Future thing, it's cool because like for years I was a babyface. I hated being babyface because it's so much harder to get people to like you than boo you. So when I first turned heel, it was something new for me to do. And then the idea was, let's do a faction, you lead like a trio. And I was like, okay, that's quite cool. And it was good for me too, because it gave me more to work with. And like Brad and Ryan are two of my best friends in wrestling. Like I love those guys. So having that natural friendship and chemistry has helped the act so much. It's just blossomed into this really cool, special thing that you can't quite pinpoint. It's very organic, it's very real. And I think when you watch us in the ring or on the camera for promos, you can tell that. You can tell it's real, it's organic, and it's got that special factor to it that you just can't quite manufacture.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of going forward in the business, what's your kind of ambitions? Obviously, you mentioned there you've been working in other places, and what's your kind of hopes going forward?
So like I want to get signed. I want to wrestle full time and make a living off wrestling. That's my ultimate goal. I'd love to wrestle in Japan because I'm a big Japanese wrestling fan. Love the style. So I'd love to wrestle in Japan. But the main goal is just to get signed. But at the same time, I don't want to be like, I want to be signed to such and such a place by such and such an age, because I feel if you do that, you're pigeonholing yourself too much and you're almost setting yourself up for failure. That's just my views. Like obviously people is like, oh, you need to have, goal when you want to achieve it. And that's fine, but wrestling is such a unique thing and it's such a unique business that I feel like if you're like, if I want to be in WWE by the time I'm 40, I think you're setting yourself up to fail a little bit. So like I look at a guy I love AJ Styles, right? He didn't get to WWE until he was like in his mid 40s and wrestled for, God knows however long. And I think, and I listened to him in an interview and he had goals and stuff, but he never really handcuffed himself, and listening to that as a wrestler, I was like, that makes, to me, so much sense.
Yeah.
Because, wrestling is always evolving, always changing, that I think you need to be open to that and not handcuff yourself, give yourself as much freedom as you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's the end goal. So
brilliant. We put everybody in the spot as we close the show with a quick fire round. Are you ready? We put in the spot?
Yep, absolutely.
Give us 3 dream opponents.
Okay, is this like worldwide or?
Yeah, worldwide. Worldwide. Some 3 ambitions.
So currently, AJ Styles would be number 1. Adam Cole would be number 2, and Okada number 3.
Very good. Favorite match you've had so far in your career?
Okay. It might be recency bias, but I had a triple threat with Damien and Aspen Faith from our Aberdeen Anarchy show in May of this year. Main event for the championship. the crowd was like white hot for it. So that's probably my favorite one because the crowd reaction was just incredible. So yeah, probably that.
Very good. Favorite wrestler in the world right now?
Oh, right now, AJ Styles.
Favorite film?
Oh, that's a good one. Favorite film? The Dark Knight.
Good call. You've obviously got a faction just now, but if you could add 3 people to the Foundation of the Future and the kind of Scottish scene, who would it be?
Ronan King, Conor Malloy. Third one. It's a tough one. Not sure about a third, but definitely those 2.
Very good. WWE or AEW?
WWE, just because of longer term as a fan spent.
Brilliant. And the final question, the dream arena you would compete in?
Madison Square Garden.
Everybody says that. I think that's just the
And number 2 would be the Tokyo Dome. That'd be number 2.
Very good. We're wishing you all the best for the future career, Zach. It's been an absolute pleasure to you on. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.